Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to show some natural solutions for back problems, especially back pain. We're going to take a closer look at the role dehydration plays. We're going to take a closer look at the role bowel transit time plays, and I'm also going to show some very effective stretches and exercises that can offer relief for some of us immediately or almost immediately, perhaps sometimes within a week. And I guess we'll start with dehydration because that's the big one right there. Most of the people I coach, in fact all of them rather, I always tell them to get a scale that will measure their water percentage, and then most of the people I coach, their mouth drops open when they look at their water percentage. The water percentage should be around 70%. Get a scale that will measure your water percentage, stand on it and look at it. When you see 50 or 55%, your mouth is going to drop open. You go, oh my God, if I'm that dehydrated, how efficiently am I working? You're not. Especially when it comes to pain, because if your disc in between your spine, in between these bones, if they become dehydrated, you got bone on bone. So the simple solution for a herniated disc is to rehydrate yourself, rehydrate those cushions in between that should be like pillows cushioning the bones. Or it's like an air shock, and it's all out of air. We got to put some air in it, but here it's water. We got to put water in between there. I've coached lots of people who had herniated disc, were scheduled for surgery, even had pain radiating all the way down to their foot because of the pain up in here. And all they did is they jumped on the first of my three-step process. Go down below in the description box. Do this. If you've got back pain, do this and you're going to see relief if you're dehydrated, and most of us are dehydrated. So when you do the first of my three-step, again, people are scheduled for surgery. They do this. Maybe 6 weeks later, no more pain anywhere, and obviously no need for surgery. So there's a very simple solution for a lot of our back problems right there. We're simply dehydrated, get a scale, measure it, and you're going to find that it takes a long time to rehydrate our cells on an intracellular level. And I also find it interesting when you look at weight. I've identified 7 major components of weight, and most of us are a combination of over and underweight. And then when we look at water, a lot of us will have edema, too much water outside the cell. Remember, dilution is a solution to pollution, but then there's not enough water inside the cell. And then a lot of people will criticize my first step, which is a solid food vacation, where we're going on a juice fast, a juice feast. Oh, you're losing water. Oh, bullshit. Get a goddamn scale and start off 3 months later, you're going to gain 10 pounds of water. Don't tell me you're going to lose water on this fast. You don't know what you're talking about. We're dehydrated. And the problem with drinking regular water, it's not structured. The fruits and vegetables do that to water. That's why we're supposed to eat our water. And when you drink, or when you eat your water, when you get most of your water from the food you're eating, it's structured and you're going to be well hydrated. Most of us aren't doing that. So a simple solution is to pound down as much liquids as you can, but make sure it's structured. So that's where my first step comes into play, because you're going to drink 1 to 2 gallons, 4 to 8 liters of freshly made juice that can hydrate the body, and then it will address the second problem that we have when it comes to back pain. And that has to do with the bowel transit time of our food. I did a video on this. I'll put a link down below on the bowel transit time of our food. What happens when we eat food that takes too long to go through our food tube? We simply got too much crap inside our food tube. Now that stretches out, expands, well, where's everything going to go? It's going to go out to the side. So if you have a real big cesspool inside you, I had a good sized one. I had a 20-pound one inside of me. I'm surprised I didn't have more problems. I was on my way to having a ton of problems, but I exercised a lot, and that stayed off a lot of those problems. But otherwise, if you got a lot of fat too and all that crap inside you, it can push things all over the place, and it can even paralyze you. And I find it really interesting recently on the Survivor series. There's only one TV show I'm really still interested in, because I'm still actually thinking about going on there, and that could be one way to get my message out. But I know when you're odd, like me, you're going to be booted out right away, so I don't know how I'd handle that. I thought of several different ways, but anyway, I thought it was interesting. There's an older gentleman on there, a 72-year-old guy, Joe. He made it right to the end, and he finally won an award challenge where you get to go eat, yippee, here's some crap you can eat. And he ended up eating a whole bunch of meat. And he wasn't a big meat eater, but he was a dead flesh eater regardless, but he wasn't a red meat eater. Like there's a big difference, right? But anyway, he ate too much meat. It could have been chicken. He would have had the same problem. Anyway, it blocked him up. He became constipated. Why? There's no fiber in meat. That's why we're not supposed to eat meat. It takes too long to go through the food tube. So what he did is he ate too much crap that had a real slow bowel transit time. It takes about 3 days for that to go through the system. And it increased the pressure in his colon. I call that condition hypercolonic tension. It's the reason why we suffer so much as a species. And it's what Victor Hugo called a serpent that's inside of us. So that's another thing that can cause back problems. It can simply stretch things out. In Joe's case, he had to be taken off the show because it applied pressure against his prostate. It couldn't urinate. So I always found it fascinating what Dr. Normall Walker said about why men have problems with the prostate. It's the same reason why women have problems with the uterus. Both of these organs are right next door to the colon and the urinary bladder. And as Walker points out, if you don't pay attention to what you put in your food tube, you're going to have a bunch of crap inside those two organs that are going to radiate out and zap organs next to it. So that's a clear proof that we have to pay attention to bowel transit time. We got to eat foods that will go in and out of us within 1 day. And then those are two simple solutions right there. Is make sure you eat food with the right bowel transit time, and make sure you're well hydrated. And remember, that takes a long time. It may take you 100 days to go from 50% to 60%, and you're drinking over a gallon of juice a day. And you were drinking a gallon of water prior to that, and you're at 50%. So regular water is not going to work. Now, there are other things we can do. There are stretches we can do, and there are exercises we can do. I'm going to show you an exercise first, because I found this exercise a long time ago, and wow, did I find relief. And I don't know if I am light enough right now where you can see this, because I'm kind of in the shadows here. But I injured my back. I'll see if I can point it out. I have a spot right here where I'm pointing. If you can't see it, you know where it's at. But it's really obvious if the lighting's good. And you can see a big bump on my hip bone. I had a football injury when I was around 19, and is the only time I ever had to be rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. I couldn't even move my body a quarter of an inch without excruciating pain I never experienced before, radiating throughout my whole body. And I fractured my hip, and I was bleeding internally, and that area gave my back problems for many, many years. And then I learned how to do a certain exercise. I learned more about how the body was working. And I learned that there's 3 sets of abdominal muscles. You got the abdominis rectus right here, that's what gives us that six-pack. Then you got the obliques on the sides. But then there's another set of abdominal muscles. I always make sure I teach all of my students, because it's so important, most people don't know about it. And they're wedged in between the pelvic girdle down here, and they don't have a range of motion. And there's only one way to exercise them, and that is isometrically. I illustrated this when I was lifting weights the other day on my birthday, and I said, back to the floor, tighten your transverse abdominal muscles. So the point here is when we use these muscles, it gives us good posture and our back is straight. So if you turn sideways and look into the mirror, what most people will do is they're very lazy. They got a big belly, and they just let that belly hang out. I'll try to push mine out. I ain't got much of a belly to push out. But when you do that, there's a sway in the back, and that can cause back pain. So what you do is you tighten these transverse abdominal muscles. It's what you do when you suck in your belly. When you're trying to impress a lady or a gentleman, whatever, you suck in your stomach, and then what does that do? It straightens the back. So this is what we should be doing all day long. As we're walking, we should be focusing. Tighten the transverse abdominal muscles, straighten the back, have good posture. And when you do that, life changes a whole lot, because this is where your center of gravity is at. This is where your chi energy originates. If you do martial arts, you know that's where it originates. It comes up and goes through the body. So this is an important part of the body to understand. And I remember when I learned about these transverse abdominal muscles, I said, I'm going to work those 24/7. And I tried my hardest everywhere I went. I was sucking them in, but I kept forgetting. But I was very tenacious about it. And I'd guess maybe 50% of the time I was doing it. I was really tightening them hard. And of course, anytime you exercise something you haven't exercised, it's real weak in the beginning, but the next day it's twice as strong, the next day it's even twice as strong, and it keeps getting stronger. So it's exciting when you exercise a muscle group you haven't worked before, because it really gets strong fast. But anyway, within 1 week, my back pain has gone away, and I hadn't had any ever since. So it's real important to do this. In fact, it was very serendipitous to an extent that I did what I did when I did, because right after I did it, Joe Montana was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, because a couple weeks earlier he was sacked. He's a football player, a quarterback, and he was sacked, and it hurt his back. And they said, poor Joe, we got to do surgery on Joe, and he's an old man, 32. He'll never recover from surgery. He was playing within 2 weeks, and on the front cover of Sports Illustrated, there's an article about him and a picture of him saying, you know, Joe did transverse abdominal therapy and he's back playing again. So very powerful. Tighten those transverse abdominal muscles. We should think about them all the time, and you can exercise them all the time. And again, it's what gives you good posture. You want good posture. If you got a big old belly and it's pushing out and your back is swaying, that can cause lower back pain. So something very simple: straighten your back, tighten your transverse abdominal muscles. The other thing we want to do is we want to have a flexible spine. I always liked the concept of Hatha yoga. They believe that if the spine is flexible, you'll be healthy. And of course, they also did a lot of exercises stimulating this area where your endocrine glands are, so that also helped people from that respect. But with the stretching, what I want to do is point out that there are 22 main ranges of motion in the spine. And there are 18 in one section and 4 in the other. We'll talk about the first 18. Those 18 come from dividing the spine into 3 sections, your upper, middle, and lower. And then each of these 3 sections can do 2 things. They can lean forward and lean back. It can lean right and lean left. And it can twist right and twist left. So when we do those, we do them in all 3 sections. So when you do it properly, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. I'm not going to do it the way I would normally do it, because when you stretch, and this is real important, make sure you do this, you have to breathe deeply. In fact, I'll do a video on breathing with our diaphragm, because we got to relearn how to do that. I'll explain in more detail about all the details to that, because that's one of the most important things I also teach my students, along with the transverse abs. You got to realize how breathing affects everything. But when we're stretching, breathing is crucial, because we want to relax while we stretch. And most people hold their breath when they stretch. And you can actually go through 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 big deep breaths while you're holding each stretch. And the key about stretching is you always stretch to a point of discomfort and slightly back off and relax there. And I also find this interesting, that when I went on my first long juice fast, where I went the distance, my 7th fast in 1994, where I had a 20-pound cesspool inside of me that I got rid of. I had movements coming out of me every day. Again, go down to the description box. That's my first step: the juice fast, the juice feast, the solid food vacation. When I did that, I noticed that I was more flexible. Prior to the fast, I was about 3 inches away from doing a complete split, stretching out. When I finished, I was about 1 inch away. I was maybe ½ an inch to 1 inch away of doing a complete stretch, where I was completely flat down all the way, simply by getting rid of that cesspool inside of me. So stretching is very important. It's important to relax and breathe when you do the stretches. And whenever you do something one way, you always have to do it the other way. If you stretch the right leg, you gotta always stretch the left leg. You don't want to be lopsided in any way. So I'm gonna go through the 3 quick stretches. I'm not gonna do the breathing. I'm gonna do a real short abbreviated section just to help you illustrate how it's done. And I will probably do a separate video and go through it just like it did the actual weightlifting exercise, where you can see how long it actually takes. It doesn't take that long to be healthy, to do the basics like building muscle mass and maintaining flexibility. Aerobics, very important, and sprinting, high intensity exercise. I just read an article this morning that came out yesterday about how they've shown how muscle produces an enzyme that promotes neurogenesis, brain growth. So we can exercise and create new brain growth. Anyway, the 3 exercises are the 3 main areas that we want to stretch. Again, would be the upper, middle, and lower spine. And when we do it, we do the top part first. So let's say I want to stretch, I want to lean to the right. Well, we don't just go like this, right? What we do is we start with our head first. So you take your ear and drop it to the shoulder. And just let it go down just as natural as you can and relax. And this is where you do your breathing, your deep breathing techniques. And you breathe in real deep and you slightly hold it and you exhale. What I like to do on the exhales, go a little bit further if I can. And also in this stretch, I like to throw my arm up there, and I'm not pulling it down with it. I just like to put it up there and let it be extra weight. And that's kind of what I try to do mentally. I imagine my head being a real heavy weight and relaxing my muscles so that I can feel the tension of what that weight should do on a relaxed muscle. You got to relax your muscles. Most people's muscles are tight. And then once you do this part, then you do the middle, and then you go ahead and you do the very bottom. And again, the longer you hold this, the more you can stretch. And then when you reverse it, you go in reverse order, and then bring it up. Always go to the left. And I'm only going to do this once because I just did it that way, and I don't want to become lopsided. So I'm just going to do it real brief, and again, out. Now, I'm not breathing like I should. I'm just doing a quick abbreviated stretch because I just did it one way, and I never want to be lopsided, so you always stretch it out. Now, that's how you do it. You start here first, then the middle, then the lower. Now, let's say if I want to twist right and left. Of course, this is a reverse image, so I'm going to be looking my right. When I first start off, again, I don't twist. What you do is you start with the head only. You simply look as far as you can to the right. And again, you relax and you let it happen naturally. Make sure this is all loose. Don't tighten those muscles. You got to be relaxed. And then, of course, then you do the middle, and then you do the back. And I'm going to do it real quick the other way. So you go both ways. Now, the other is where you lean forward and you lean back. There's a lot of ways to do that. I like to do two yoga stretches. One's the pose of the child, and the other is the cobra stretch. I believe that's what it's called. Where it's kind of like doing a push-up and you push it back and you look back. So that stretches back that way. And then I love the pose of the child where you ball up into a ball and put your arms down and your chest will drop into your knees. Your head should be on the floor. And again, the key here is to stretch and breathe. And I like to do this stretch for like 5 minutes. And when you do this, the more you relax, the more you stretch, the more you can feel the back elongating, and the more your head gets down onto the floor, the more your knees or your chest is sinking into your knees. And of course, most people have such a big belly in here that they can't do that. So that's another reason why we got to be aware of the bowel transit time of the food and the hypercolonic tension that it creates, because death begins in the colon and then the lymph system backs up into the body, and that's the disease process. So those are real simple stretches we can do. And I was just thinking just now, another stretch that would be a good thing to do for people when they have trouble sleeping and if they feel tension in the back. There's another hatha yoga stretch I was just thinking of just now, is the rocking chair, where you ball up in a ball, but this time you roll back on your back, and what that do is that will massage your spine, the muscles in between your spine. And of course, you can't do that on a hardwood floor. You have to have a carpet or something, or a mat of some sort, so that that protects your back. So those are some stretches we can do. Now, there's 4 more ranges of motion the back has. It helps to understand. They're not necessarily a source of pain so much, but it has to do with what's called the sternoclavicle articulation. I haven't thought of that word in 20 years. The sternoclavicle articulation. It's actually a joint. It has a range of motion, and it's what the shoulders can do, where they can shrug up and they can shrug down, and then they can shrug forward and they can shrug back. So there's 4 more ranges of motions, 4 and 18. So stretching the spine is very helpful to keep the back flexible. The key to having a good, healthy back is to have a good, strong core of abdominal muscles. Now, I have not done any abdominal crunches in, let me think, probably 26 years or something like that. I don't do any form of abdominal exercises, except when I'm riding my bike. I'm very in tune to my body. I know how to work every part of my body isometrically, pretty much, kind of like a ballet dancer can do. But when I have the handlebars, I handle those handlebars, and I'm torquing and twisting my body. So I'm getting an abdominal workout just by riding my bike. You can kind of see what I'm doing now. I'm grabbing those handlebars, and I'm working my arms and my upper body with that, and then I'm torquing and twisting. And another thing I like to do when I'm riding my bike, I like to use my great imagination, and I pretend like I'm a plant and that the sun is pulling my back upward, and I'm elongating my spine. So that's another thing that's very interesting about your spine. You can elongate your spine several inches. You can elevate it, increasing the space in between your spine, and go up, and then you can actually lower it back down, provide your back is straight. So tighten your transverse abdominal muscles, and you can actually stack your vertebrae down low, and the next thing you know, if you're looking where your shoulders are, they can be here to here. Big difference just by contracting the spine. So I do a lot of interesting things like that with my body, because I like to think of the body as a good thing to have a hobby with. If you're going to have a hobby, why not have your body be a hobby? And the most important part of this hobby is making sure we eat the right foods. Most of us have not eaten the right foods most of our lives. So where do we begin? Well, it's a shock to go from one way to another. And as long as we're eating, we're always going to struggle. So the best way to deal with all food addictions, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, is to do a solid food vacation. This is the best way to control things that are controlling us, and what's controlling us, eating the wrong food. So if we do a solid food vacation for the appropriate length of time, and no one knows how long that is, you take it one day at a time, you're going to do several really good things for your body. You're going to get rid of that hypercolonic tension. You're also going to get rid of the hyperlymphatic tension, which is where most diseases are coming from. And I did several videos on this. Healing Secrets Revealed and Medicine is the Ultimate Tool of Control. I'll add links down below where I explain there are 2 short-term self-limited diseases and 4 long-term stages of disease that come from the lymph system backing up. So what's the solution for all of our problems, all of our pain? Most of it at least is to get rid of that cesspool, bump up the biophotons, address the hypoheliosis. So we get rid of the hypercolonic tension and the hyperlymphatic tension, and we bump up the biophotons, we get rid of hypoheliosis. And when we do that, that will change our mentality, we'll have a different outlook on life, and that brings me to the very final thing about back pain. And I believe the guy's name is, I should have looked this up, Dr. John Sorrow, maybe, or Soros. He has an interesting theory about back pain, that it's a way for us to distract ourselves whenever we're having other issues. And all we have to do is just create a pain and conveniently have a back pain. And if he wasn't seeing so much success, I'd think, well, I know the brain is powerful, but that's a good one. In fact, John Stossel did a show on this, and I'm not a big fan of John Stossel at all because he has money and chemicals and says organic food is no better than conventional food. Everyone probably knows about John Stossel, what he did on that a while back. But he was suffering back pains for like 20 years or something like that. And he goes to this guy in one visit, his back pain is gone. And it's funny because his brother's a doctor. When he told his brother this, he just said, "Oh, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. It's all in your mind." Exactly. So why do you have back pains? Well, maybe you're being distracted. So if everything I'm saying isn't working, then let's take a closer look at your life. And one of the best things you can do to improve every aspect of your life is a solid food vacation. Get the book, The Transforming Power of Fasting and Prayer by Bill Bright, full of great testimonies of people who are having all types of problems. And they weren't just health issues, they were financial issues and relationship issues. And when they cleansed that cesspool out of it and bumped up their biophotons, good things started to happen to them. I also highly recommend listening to the Dr. Roba interview. This doctor was on day 21 of My First Step, and you can hear the excitement in his voice about how exciting this is for most of us. Unfortunately, some of us struggle because our body's damaged and we haven't figured out how to support it yet, or we can't support it well enough. It's going to still scream at us for a while, but hopefully we can figure out how to support it where on a temporary basis. Hopefully it's not permanent damage where we have to do this for the rest of our lives, but hopefully we can support the body long enough so that this is a pleasant journey for us. And then once we build a brand new body, as long as there's no permanent damage done, there's no reason why we should ever experience any pain at all, whether it's back pain, toothaches, headaches, anything else. Remember, pain is part of our feedback system telling us we're making mistakes, and most of us have a malfunctioning survival mechanism where we actually derive pleasure from some of our mistakes, and then magically diseases just fall out of the sky. I don't know where the cancer came from. I don't know why my prostate's giving me problems. Heart attack, where'd that come from? It's what you're doing every day of your life. So we got to learn to make better choices, and that's a hard thing to do. So the best place to start is the first of my 3-step process. Go down below in the description box below, listen to the Dr. Roba interview, watch my seminar on how to do a solid food vacation. If you want to know more about the disease process, if you're having any struggles at all, look at the Healing Secrets Revealed and Medicine is the Ultimate Tool of Control. And I've uploaded a lot of videos last year that explain every piece of the puzzle if you're interested. I have a special teaching tool that I created that identifies all 281 pieces, and they all fit to one another. And if you have the inclination, you can go to theultimatesolution.com. The link is down below. It's an 11-part video series. 9 of those 11 parts describe all 281 pieces that I identified. So I've got a really important story I want to share with everybody. I identified all the pieces of the puzzle, and they fit on a schematic, and you can see that my story makes sense logically. And I can show where their story doesn't make sense. Monas ponens are putting the cart before the horse. And then I not only identified all the pieces to my story, but I've identified all the important pieces so that anybody can look at my schematic and say, well, this is what I think. Where's it at? Oh, it's right here. Oh my gosh, I'm only 1 piece out of 6 pieces in this puzzle, but I'm also in this puzzle, I'm only 1 piece out of 10 pieces. So many people think they found the solution, and they only found 1 piece of the puzzle. If you want to know more, check out my other videos, and remember, when you do the first of my 3-step process, you're in for a treat.